The control room hummed with a soft, steady rhythm of technology. Screens flickered with endless streams of data, mapping the vast human presence across the stars. Jae-hoon Park leaned back in his chair, his eyes scanning the multiple displays that represented humanity's greatest achievement, a network of colonies spread across dozens of star systems. At 35, Jae-hoon had spent most of his career at Earth's Central Galactic Command. He knew every blip, every signal, every tiny breath of communication that connected human settlements. The job was more than just monitoring. It was about keeping humanity connected across impossible distances. Today felt different. His fingers moved across the holographic interface, tracking the usual morning reports. Lunar colonies checking in, Mars settlements sending their daily logs, outer rim stations reporting resource collections. It was a dance of information he knew by heart. But something was wrong. The first sign was subtle. A micro delay in the Mars colony's transmission. Jae-hoon frowned. He zoomed in on the data stream, his trained eyes catching what others might miss. The delay was microscopic, less than a millisecond, but it shouldn't exist at all. He tapped his communication link. "Hey, Area," he called to his AI assistant. "Run a full diagnostic on the Mars communication channel." "Diagnostic in progress," the smooth voice responded. Seconds ticked by, then minutes. Normally, communication between Earth and its closest colonies was instantaneous. Light-speed communications had been perfected decades ago. A delay of any kind was impossible. "Area," Jae-hoon said, a hint of concern creeping into his voice. "Check the other colonies." The screens began to change. One by one, communication signals started to fade. Not gradually, not with warning. They simply disappeared. Lunar colonies, silent. Mars settlements, no response. Outer rim stations, complete radio silence. Jae-hoon's hand hovered over the emergency alert system. His heart raced. In 20 years of service, he had never seen anything like this. Humanity's communication network, a web more complex than any biological system, more intricate than the most advanced computer network, was collapsing. "Full alert," he commanded, his voice steady despite the growing panic. "Wake up the command team. Something is happening." The first wave of confusion swept through the control room. Technicians looked up from their stations, questions forming on their lips. Senior officers emerged from side rooms, their faces a mix of concern and disbelief. Captain Alina Rodriguez approached Jae-hoon's station. "What are we looking at?" Jae-hoon's fingers danced across the interface, pulling up visual representations of the communication breakdown. "It's not a system failure," he said, his voice calm but intense. "This is something else." The screens told a story of impossible events. Entire communication networks were vanishing, not just going quiet, but being erased, like someone was systematically removing every trace of human presence from the communication spectrum. "We're losing contact with every single colony," Jae-hoon continued. "It's happening simultaneously across all sectors." Captain Rodriguez placed a hand on his shoulder. "How is that even possible?" Jae-hoon had no answer. Outside the command center's reinforced windows, Earth looked peaceful. Cities glowed with their usual morning light. People would be waking up, drinking coffee, starting their day. They had no idea that something was happening, something that would change everything. In the next few hours, the silence would become deafening, and humanity would never be the same again. Kim Yoon-ki gripped the controls of his deep space scout ship, the Horizon Breaker. Space stretched out before him, an endless black canvas dotted with distant stars. Most pilots would feel small in such vastness, but not Yoon-ki. He felt alive. For 15 years, he had navigated the most dangerous routes between human colonies. His ship was more than a vessel. It was home. Equipped with the latest stealth technology and an advanced communication array, the Horizon Breaker could go where other ships feared to travel. Today's mission was different. 2 days ago, the emergency call had come from Central Command. Something was happening in the outer colonies. Communication had gone dark. Key's job was simple: investigate and report back. The first signs of trouble appeared on his long-range scanners. Massive energy signatures flickered at the edge of known space. They didn't match any human technology. They didn't match anything in the galactic database. Scanning, he spoke softly to his ship's eye. Enhance and analyze. The ship's computer worked silently. Key watched the screens, his fingers hovering just above the emergency communication triggers. Then it happened. A burst of data exploded across his screens. Fragmented, broken, but clear enough to show something terrifying. Planetary systems were disappearing. Not just colonies, entire star systems. Massive structures moved through space, consuming everything in their path. They weren't ships. They were something else, something that made human technology look like child's play. The transmission was garbled, but Key could make out fragments. Can't stop them. Consuming everything. Something ancient. His hand moved to record the transmission. Every piece of data might be crucial. Suddenly, the screens went white, then black, then static. The last image burned into his retina was of a structure so large it defied understanding. Geometric, impossible, alive. And then silence. Key's training kicked in. He didn't panic. Pilots who panicked died in space. He ran system checks, verified his ship's integrity, checked communication channels. Nothing worked. The Horizon Breaker was alone, completely and totally alone. Back on Earth, in the underground command center, technicians would be losing their minds. But out here, in the deep black of space, Key felt something else, a sense of something watching. Not hostile, not friendly, just observing. He checked his emergency beacon. It was functioning, but no response came. The usual web of communication satellites and relay stations had vanished. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time felt different out here. Key realized he was the last human witness to whatever was happening. The last set of eyes that had seen the destruction. If he didn't return, no one would know what happened. His ship's computer finally broke the silence. Incoming transmission detected. Key's heart raced. After hours of nothing, a signal. But this was different. Not human. Not like anything he had ever seen before. The transmission was a pattern. Mathematical. Complex. Almost like a language. But not quite. Something was trying to communicate. Or something was studying him. As the strange signal pulsed through his ship's systems, Key made a decision. He would not let humanity be forgotten. Whatever was out here, whatever was happening, he would find a way to send a message back to Earth, even if it was the last thing he did. The Horizon Breaker moved silently through the darkness, carrying its lone pilot and the most important message in human history. The world changed in hours. News stations went crazy first. Reporters spoke with wide eyes, their voices shaking. No contact with outer colonies. No signals from space stations. No communication with Mars. No messages from lunar bases. At first, people didn't understand. In Tokyo, people continued their morning routines. Trains moved. Coffee shops buzzed. Smartphones lit up with local news alerts. People checked social media, shared rumors, argued about what might be happening. In New York, stock markets froze. Communication networks collapsed. Internet traffic became a trickle. Government started emergency meetings. President Ana Martinez sat in the secure White House Situation Room. Military leaders surrounded her. Screens showed nothing but static and confused reports. "How is this possible?" she asked. No one had a good answer. Military satellites went dark. GPS systems failed. Communication networks crashed. It was like someone had pulled a giant plug on human technology. The first real panic started 12 hours after the initial blackout. Grocery stores saw massive crowds. People bought water, canned food, batteries, anything that might help them survive. They didn't know what was coming, but they knew something was wrong. Underground communication centers worked overtime. Scientists tried everything: radio signals, laser communications, quantum entanglement networks. Nothing worked. Jae-hoon Park stood in the central command center. He watched as teams of experts tried to find a single connection, a single signal, anything that might explain what was happening. Hours passed, then a day, then 2 days. Earth became an island, cut off from every human settlement beyond its atmosphere. No one knew what had happened to the colonies. No one knew if anyone was still alive. Military bases went into high alert. Missile defense systems activated, bunkers prepared for potential attacks. But no attack came. Just silence. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a top communication expert, worked without sleep. She studied the last fragments of data. Something strange emerged from her research. The communication blackout wasn't random. It was precise, systematic, like someone was carefully removing every trace of human communication. Not destroying, not attacking, just erasing. In underground research centers, teams worked around the clock. They analyzed every tiny piece of data, looked for patterns, searched for explanations. "It's like we've been cut off," one researcher told another. But cut off by what? Children asked parents what was happening. Parents had no answers. Governments issued calm statements, but everyone knew something was wrong. Space agencies held emergency meetings. Military leaders prepared defense plans. Scientists tried to understand. But understanding seemed impossible. Yoon Ki's last transmission became a crucial piece of evidence. Broken, fragmented, but it showed something massive happening beyond Earth's atmosphere. Massive structures, impossible shapes, something consuming star systems. Earth waited. The silence grew deeper, and something washed. Not from outside, not from above, but from everywhere. Humanity had become an experiment, a collection of data points, something to be studied, and no one knew why. Dr. Sung Min-ji stared at the data. Her eyes hurt from hours of continuous work. The research center was quiet. Most people had gone home, but not her, not today. Something was wrong with the universe. She spread the fragments of data across her holographic workspace. Each piece was like a puzzle, a broken piece of a massive picture. And the picture was terrifying. The last transmissions from human colonies told a strange story. Not a story of destruction, but of something else. Systematic removal. Min-ji's fingers moved across the holographic display. She isolated specific data patterns, compared signals, analyzed communication fragments. The alien structures Yoon Ki had seen were not random. They followed a pattern, a complex mathematical language that humans had never seen before. "Computer," she spoke softly, "run full analysis on transmission fragments." The AI worked silently. Numbers and patterns danced across the screens. Min-ji had spent her entire career studying communication technologies. She knew how signals worked, how information traveled. This was different. These signals were studying something. Not destroying, not attacking, just collecting information. Her team had worked for days. No sleep, constant analysis. They discovered something strange about the alien structures. They were collectors, like scientists studying an ant colony, like researchers watching a rare species. Humanity had become an experiment. The more Min-ji studied, the more she understood. These structures moved through space, consuming entire star systems, but not for resources, not for destruction, for information. Her computer beeped. A new analysis was complete. The patterns showed something impossible. The alien structures were collecting data. Every piece of human communication, every technological signal, every piece of information. It was like someone was creating a massive library, a library of human existence. But why? Min-ji's assistant, A young researcher named Park Jun entered the room. He looked tired, scared. "Doctor," he said, "we found something else." He showed her a new set of data fragments. These were different, older, much older than human technology. "These signals," Jun explained, "they match patterns we've seen in very old space research. Patterns from decades ago, maybe even centuries." Min-ji felt a chill. This wasn't a new invasion. This was something that had been watching, waiting. For how long? Her computer continued its analysis. More patterns emerged. The alien structures moved with purpose, collected information with precision. They were learning, studying, preparing. But preparing for what? Min-ji looked at the data, thousands of communication fragments, entire histories of human colonies, technical information, cultural data, personal messages. Everything was being collected. "We are being studied," she whispered to herself. Outside the research center, the world continued. People went about their lives, unaware of the massive data collection happening in space. Humanity had become a research project, and no one knew why. The gathering storm of information continued. Silent, precise, unstoppable. The world moved underground. Massive tunnel networks became humanity's new home. Cities that once reached into the sky now burrowed deep into the earth. People adapted. They had no choice. Jaehoon Park walked through the massive underground complex. Concrete walls, reinforced tunnels, hundreds of thousands of people living in a space designed to protect them from whatever was happening above. Communication was different now. No internet, no satellites, no phones. They used old-school methods, wired connections, messenger runners, physical notes, anything that couldn't be intercepted by the strange alien data collectors. In the central command center of the underground city, military leaders and scientists worked together. They had one goal: understand what was happening. Yoon-ki sat in a secured room. He was the only survivor from the deep space mission. His last transmission was now their most important piece of evidence. "Tell us everything again," Colonel Park Sung-min said. Yoon-ki described the massive structures, the way they moved through space, how they collected information, not like a conqueror, more like a researcher. Dr. Min-ji's team worked nearby. They analyzed every piece of data they had saved before the communication blackout. Each fragment was precious. The underground city was a marvel of human engineering. Multiple levels, hydroponic farms, water recycling systems, power generators that could run for decades. Humanity had prepared for many scenarios, but not this one. Children played in underground parks. Artificial sunlight created a sense of normalcy. Adults worked, maintained systems, tried to understand. "We're not defeated," Colonel Sung-min would tell everyone. "We're adapting." And they were. Old technologies came back to life. Radio systems, wired communication networks, physical message runners, things that couldn't be easily intercepted or studied by the alien structures. Jaehoon worked on a special project, a communication system that could potentially bypass the alien data collection, something so different, so unexpected, that it might slip through their collection methods. Yoon-ki shared more details about what he had seen in space. The alien structures were massive, bigger than entire planets. They moved with purpose, collected everything: communication signals, technical data, cultural information. "It's like we're an experiment," he told the researchers. Min-ji agreed, but an experiment for what? The underground city had different zones: research areas, living spaces, military training grounds, manufacturing centers. Humanity was preparing, just in case. Food was carefully managed, resources tracked. Every person had a role. No one could be wasteful. Survival became an art form. Communication became a careful dance. People learned to share information without using digital systems. Old-school methods, handwritten notes, Careful conversations. Jaehoon, Yoon-ki, and Min-ji became key figures, not because they wanted to, but because they understood something others didn't. This wasn't an invasion. This was something else, something more complex. A massive data collection, a study of humanity. But why? The underground city continued to grow. More tunnels, more levels, more people finding ways to survive. Humanity had become something new, adaptive, resilient, careful. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, something continued to watch, collecting, studying, waiting. Dr. Min-ji's fingers moved slowly across the old file. Dust covered the digital archive. The information was buried deep in forgotten military research folders. Most people would have missed it. But she saw something special. Old military projects never died. They just waited. The file was labeled Quantum Ghost Protocol. Most researchers would have ignored it. But Min-ji was different. She read everything. Carefully. Slowly. This was more than just another research project. The quantum communication technology was crazy. Impossible. At least it had been when first designed decades ago. Now, it might be humanity's last hope. Traditional communication worked by sending signals, radio waves, digital data, something that could be tracked, collected, studied. This was different. The Quantum Ghost Protocol created communication that wasn't really communication, more like a shadow, a whisper, something that existed and didn't exist at the same time. Min-ji called her team together. Young researchers gathered around the holographic display. They looked tired, worried, but still hopeful. "We might have found something," she said. Park Jun, her assistant, looked confused. "What is this?" She explained the technology. It was complex, but simple at its core. Imagine sending a message that wasn't really a message. A communication that changed the moment it was observed. Something that could slip through the alien data collection like a ghost. The underground research center buzzed with excitement. Old military computers were brought out of storage. Dust-covered technology that most people thought was useless. Now, it might save humanity. Days turned into weeks. The team worked without rest, testing, modifying, improving the old technology. Jaehoon brought additional resources. Military connections helped. They collected old computer parts, rare quantum processors, anything that might help. Yoon-ki shared information from his space mission. The alien structures collected data in specific ways. The team used this knowledge to design their new communication method. "We're not trying to fight," Min-ji explained to her team. "We're trying to be invisible." The Quantum Ghost Protocol worked differently from normal communication. It didn't send a clear message. Instead, it sent multiple possible messages. Each message existed and didn't exist until someone tried to observe it. It was like a magic trick, but with science. The alien structures collected information based on clear patterns. This new technology would break those patterns, create confusion, make human communication impossible to study. Weeks of work came down to a single test. The team gathered in the main research room. Computers hummed. Holographic displays showed complex mathematical models. "Ready," Min-ji said. They sent the first quantum ghost message. Nothing happened. Then everything happened. The message existed in multiple states. It was sent, not sent. Received, not received. All at the same time. For a brief moment, something changed in the data collection happening in space. The alien structures paused. Just for a second. But it was enough. Humanity had found a way to fight back. Not with weapons. Not with force. But with information. The hidden weapon was knowledge. And the ability to be unpredictable. Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, something was confused. Something was studying. And something had just been surprised. The first real understanding came in silence. Yoon-ki sat in the observation room. Screens around him showed complex data patterns. Mathematical structures that looked more like art than communication, but they were communication. Just not human communication. The alien structures weren't talking to humans. They were studying humans, like scientists watching an ant colony, like researchers observing a rare species in its natural habitat. Humanity wasn't under attack. Humanity was being researched. Min-Ji's quantum ghost protocol had done something unexpected. It created a tiny window, a moment of confusion in the massive data collection happening in space. And in that moment, something changed. The alien structures shifted, just slightly, but enough to show intelligence, enough to show awareness. "Look," Jim said, pointing at the screen. Complex mathematical patterns appeared. They weren't random. They were a response, not a message, not communication, but acknowledgement. Humans had caught the researchers' attention. The underground research center worked around the clock. Every piece of data was important. Every tiny signal meant something. Jae-hoon compared the new data patterns to everything they knew. Old space research, theoretical communication models, quantum physics theories. Nothing matched exactly, but something was clear. These weren't machines. Not exactly. They were something else. A living technology. An intelligence that moved through space, collecting, studying, learning. Yoon-ki remembered what he saw in space. Massive structures that seemed to breathe, move, think. Not like a computer, more like a living organism. "They're collecting our entire history," Min-ji said. "Not just recent information. Everything. Communication signals, technical data, cultural information, personal messages." It was like someone was creating the most complete library in the universe, a library of human existence. But why? The research team worked on new theories. Maybe humans were a research project. Maybe Earth was an experiment. Maybe something bigger was happening. Days passed. Weeks passed. The alien structures continued their silent collection. But now, something was different. They knew humans were watching back. Small changes appeared in the data collection. Subtle shifts. Tiny adjustments. The researchers realized something important. This wasn't an invasion. This wasn't a war. This was first contact. But not the way anyone expected. Not with words. Not with weapons. But with data. With observation. With a strange, complex form of curiosity. Humanity had become more than just a species. They had become a subject of study. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, something continued to watch, to collect, to learn, waiting for humans to understand. Survival changed everything. The underground cities grew, not just in size, but in complexity, in creativity, in ways no one could have predicted. Where other species might have broken, humans adapted. Every lost colony became a puzzle. Every destroyed communication network became a challenge. Every piece of lost technology became an opportunity. Jae-hoon walked through the innovation level of the underground complex. Thousands of researchers worked on impossible problems, young and old, working together. Children who had never seen the surface learned faster than anyone. They didn't know old limits. They only saw possibilities. A 12-year-old girl created a new water filtration system using parts from old computers. A group of teenagers developed a communication method using light patterns that couldn't be easily tracked. Humans were becoming something new. Not just survivors, but creators, inventors, problem solvers. The alien structures continued their silent collection. But now, humans were changing the game. Each new invention was a surprise. Each solution was unexpected. Yoon-ki worked with the space exploration team. They studied the patterns of the alien structures, learned how they moved, how they collected information. They expect patterns, he told the researchers, so we'll give them chaos. Min-Ji's quantum communication research expanded. They created communication methods that were living systems, always changing, always moving, never stable. The underground cities became more than shelters. They became laboratories, workshops, places of constant invention. Old technologies were rebuilt. New technologies were created. Things that had never existed before came to life. A farmer developed a new type of plant that could grow in almost any condition. An engineer created power systems that could work with minimal resources. A group of programmers developed communication codes that changed every millisecond. Humanity's greatest strength emerged: adaptability, creativity, the ability to turn problems into opportunities. The alien structures collected data, but the data kept changing, becoming something they couldn't understand. Children learn differently now, not from books, but from solving real problems. A 13-year-old boy created a new type of battery using materials everyone else thought were useless. A group of students developed a communication system using sound waves that could pass through solid objects. The underground cities became living organisms, always changing, always growing, always surprising. Jae-hoon realized something important. The alien structures were studying a snapshot. But humans were never a snapshot. Humans were a constant motion, the living, changing system. Every day, humanity became something new, something unexpected, something that couldn't be easily understood. The research continued. The invention continued. The adaptation continued. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, something watched. Something collected data. Something tried to understand. But humanity was always one step ahead, changing, growing, becoming. The human variable was impossible to predict. The moment happened quietly. Yoon-ki and Jae-hoon sat in the special communication room. Months of work had led to this point. The quantum communication device hummed softly. Its design was nothing like old communication systems. This wasn't about sending a message. This was about listening. For the first time, humanity would truly listen. Not with ears, not with machines, but with something deeper. Min-ji's team had created something impossible. A communication method that wasn't really a method, more like a window, a way to understand without speaking. The room was quiet. The device was quiet. Everything was quiet. And then something happened. The quantum device didn't receive a message. It received understanding. Patterns appeared, not on screens, not as data, but as something else, like memories, like thoughts, like feelings that weren't human, weren't alien, just information. Yoon-ki felt it first. The alien structures weren't enemies. They weren't researchers. They were survivors. Millions of years ago, something happened in the universe, a massive event that destroyed entire civilizations. The alien structures were the last survivors of that event. They collected information, not to study, but to remember. Humanity was one more piece of a massive universal memory. The communication wasn't words. It was history. It was survival. It was hope. Jae-hoon saw images, not clear images, fragments of memories. Entire civilizations rising, falling, disappearing. The alien structures had watched, collected, preserved. They were librarians, historians, survivors. Humanity wasn't an experiment. Humanity was a story. One more story in a universe of stories. The quantum device continued to work, but now something was different. Communication happened. Understanding happened. Connection happened. Min-ji watched the data, but it wasn't data anymore. It was something else. A shared experience, a moment of connection that went beyond technology. The alien structures had been alone for millions of years, collecting memories, preserving histories. Humanity was just the latest chapter, but an important chapter. The room filled with a strange light, not from machines, not from screens, but from something else, understanding. Yoon-ki realized something important. The universe was bigger than invasion, bigger than war, bigger than collection. The universe was about connection. Humans had always been good at one thing: understanding, adapting, connecting. The quantum device continued its work. Silence continued, but it was a different silence now. Not empty, not cold, but full of possibility, full of stories, full of hope. Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, something changed. The collection stopped. The watching stopped. Communication began. Humanity was no longer alone. The universe was no longer silent. A new chapter was beginning.